Welcome everybody to Borrowed Time. This has been in the planning for a very long time, which Matt and I will discuss in a moment. But we have ended up in the very professional situation of sharing a microphone, because at the very last minute, one of our mics decided to die. So if you've ever wondered why broadcasters in the news are wearing two microphones, now you know why. So we'll be handing the microphone between us. Matt, just if you'd like to just say hello, then we can go and do a bit of housekeeping.
Welcome everyone, and yes, we're going to do a sort of fuller intro in a minute, but Richard's going to give us a bit of hop-in housekeeping, and welcome everyone who's negotiating hop-in for the first time. You're in good company, so if you're having a problem, you can be assured that plenty of us are too.
So hopefully you've already discovered reception. And the reception area is essentially where you end up when you first come into Hop-In. And the reception area can tell you exactly what the schedule is going to be. It can tell you who's around. And most importantly, if you use the event chat, it allows you to talk, basically broadcast, to anybody who's live in the session. So it's a very good way of saying help. I really don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. But the simple way of navigating your way through Hop-In is to look at it's a very different paradigm to Zoom. It's more like a website that's doing lots of live things. So if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, there should be a number of buttons there. There should be 4 or 5 buttons there. The top one will take you back to reception. The next one will take you to the main stage, which is where we are now. And the main stage is basically what it looks like. It's 1 or 2 or 3 people talking at you, rather than it being an interactive space. But again, you can still use the chat. And you can also, if you look on the other side of the screen, you'll see next to the chat, you'll see a Q&A tab. So if you want to ask a question, that's the place to do it. So send us a question in Q&A. We've got lots of people in the back kind of looking out, watching for things and questions as they roll along. Please don't ask us technical questions now, but the Q&A is really there for when we start the sessions. But do if you are feeling uneasy, or lost, do just ask a question in events and somebody will respond to you. So below going back on the left-hand side, below the stage button is a sessions button. And basically whenever you click on that, you will see any sessions that are live to which you have access. So you have access to all of the general sessions, but you will not have access to workshops unless you've already signed up for them. And if you want to sign up for workshops, go back to the main Borrowed Time website. We can still take bookings. We'll leave them open till the last minute, till tomorrow morning. So you'll see any live sessions there, and if you've booked into workshop, you'll see your workshop listed there as well. Just click on it. It will take you into the space. And then below the sessions tab, there's also Expo. And Expo is basically, if you think of it as the table in a conference where people just throw stuff for you to pick up and have a look at and take away with you. You can't take anything away, but you can have a good explore. And we've got lots of films screening in there. We've got people's books. We've got a gallery section. We've got, anyway, you explore it. Go ahead and in your spare time, have a look at it. And similarly, the screening of the magnitude of all things is also available by clicking on the session in the Hop-In reception, and it will take you to an external website to watch that film. Only you, as registered delegates, have access to that film, so it's a private link. And we're very privileged to have spoken with Jennifer Abbott's team and got access to that film. I believe it's the first screening in the UK, actually. Yeah. So that's my very brief, quick introduction to Hop-In, and I'm going to pass over to Matt Osmond.
I'm going to clip. Is anything bad going to happen if I clip on? because then I can read Dom's. I can have Dom's book in my hand. Nope. Always lift your glasses before you. Yes. So, as we said, a warm welcome to everyone, and especially to those of you that joined us back in when did the first call out go out? 2019. Yeah. It's been a long road with a pandemic still going on, obviously, that's put us all onto a very different timing. And I'm aware of a good few people out there who have been here right from the start. So a big thanks to all of you for coming, and especially to those of you who stuck with us all that time. Not least when we made the decision to step over into the virtual space. And I think, you know, we're all kind of, probably most of us here are veterans of the dilemmas and the gifts and opportunities that this has given us. It's almost impossible to imagine a world before Zoom for many of us now. I think it's mediated so much communication this last 18 months. There's a sense none of us quite know what we're living through in those terms, as well as so many other things. I just want to, not assuming that everyone here has been part of this conversation right from the start, or has necessarily sort of looked much into what this is going on. I thought it was just worth touching base with what brought us here to Borrowed Time and how this began. So this began in early 2019, and it was a conversation in the spring of that year. Richard and I and a friend called Lucy Willow met to talk about this idea of how would it be to bring this language, this discourse of endings and loss and ecological grief that surrounds the ecological crisis and mass extinction and this kind of growing background din that we live with. And for some of us, of course, it's not background at all. And that's another thing that I think will be spoken to very well over the next few days. But this deepening reality we're part of, how would it be to bring that conversation to a table, to sit at table with those who work directly, practically, intimately with death and dying, with those who are handling death and dying on a daily basis. So we have a wonderful steering team who helped us pull this together, and big thanks to all of them. And you can see on the web page includes dancers, death doulas, end-of-life doulas, sorry Anna, and artists, writers and editors. So a kind of eclectic mix that reflected the kind of breadth that we were looking for in that conversation. We've already had a series of guests, and this 3-day summit is not the end of it. So we've got past and future guests. Those who've already come and joined us are now on our website. And one of our keynotes, Dr. Rachel Clark, already spoke earlier in the year and gave a fantastic talk about living with the realities of COVID on the front line of the NHS. And those of you who are not aware of her, I'd urge you to read Rachel's regular witness statements from the front line, really, from that ongoing process. She's a very powerful speaker. But we've had a whole series of others, writers, those who work in funerary practice, artists, poets, and others. And we'd like to continue this spirit of sharing this conversation we're having as soon as we can after each event, without paywall, so that we're really just working in a culture of just giving away whatever comes up here, so that it can be of benefit to a much wider audience as we go. So, of course, that's always with every speaker's permission, but we would seek to share most of the content that's going to come up over the next 3 days, unless we're asked not to. I mean, obviously, sort of workshops and some more intimate Q&As, we wouldn't be putting those online. So that was the question. How might this discussion of ecological loss, this reality of mass extinction and ecological crisis, be slanted by a conversation with those directly involved in death and dying and death culture in all its forms, but also, of course, the reverse. How might those cultures be affected as their own skills and aptitudes take on wider resonance in the context of grieving both human and non-human loss? And maybe also, how might that conversation help us all in, I think one of the themes that's going to come up in a number of the talks is this difficult balance that seems to be surrounding this conversation between accepting the enormity of something we can't necessarily change and revolting against that which we can change, actively resisting that which we can change. And how do we hold those two things in balance? If you like, for me, that comes down to a response before dying and a response before killing. And they're not the same thing, obviously. So the last thing I wanted to mention about sharing is also just to make sure you're all aware that we're also doing a borrowed time publication, and do kind of submit, give an expression of interest for that if you'd like to do that. It could be what you've brought here to the summit if you're a presenter, one of our presenters. It could be an entirely new piece of work. And one of the things I should have mentioned, one of our editorial team, through our collaboration with our friend and colleague Charlotte de Cannes, one of the editors and core team of the Dark Mountain project. Dark Mountain did an issue called Requiem early in the year, which again very much was in step and partnership with us as we went. And several of the speakers who are here as part of the next 3 days, and some of those like Christos Galanis, who is already in Requiem. So that Dark Mountain collaboration is part of this conversation. One of the things, apart from a pandemic, one of the strange synchronicities about this event is, of course, that it starts in close step with COP26, which I think is another of those things you just couldn't make up. You know, you announce you're going to have a conference on death, dying, and change, and I think the result, what's happened since, has proved the cosmos has a sense of humour. Anyway, we're going to end our 3 days with a session that's going to invite your own voices into the room. And more obviously your own voice is going to be in the room throughout, but we're going to try and really leave an open space at the end of the session for responders. And as part of that, we would like to gather messages to send to COP. And we'll decide that at the time, what form that will take. And leave them in the chat. We could leave them in the chat. We'll find a way to do that. We'll be equipped for that by Tuesday morning. But when I was thinking about that notion of responding to COP, the first thing that came to mind was this short statement by the American poet Donald Ravel. And I want to thank my friend and Falmouth poet Penelope Shuttle, who read this to us when she introduced a poetry festival in 2017. And I think it's more true now than it was 4 years ago, and a good starting point for me in orienting as a summit, as an arts and ecology summit on death, dying and change, turning to look towards COP and wondering what we might say to those gathered at COP26. I just want to bring the words of Donald Ravel before just bringing to the last part of this intro. It is the intimacy of poetry that makes our art such a beautiful recourse from the disgrace and the manipulations of public speech, of empty rhetoric. A poem that begins to see, then continues seeing, is not deceived, nor is it deceptive. So as I said, when we get to the end of our 3 days together, we're going to have this open forum for people to come and speak back to how they've been touched by what's happened here, how they've been challenged or affected by different people and ideas and things they've met here, and maybe to reflect on what the conversation that we've spoken about, what it comes down to for them. And I realized reading the Ravel that actually intimacy is as good a name as any for me, for what it comes down to for me. So I want to seed this idea of responding to others' voices in each of these welcomes, just to bring someone into the room who's already joined us, and to just own what each of them laid on me, and maybe just to invite that process from others, and hopefully to provoke different takes, including on COP26. Last thing I want is a party line, but I doubt we'll get that. So just to start that process, and before we welcome our first keynote, Bayo Komolafe, earlier in the year, one of our borrowed time conversations took place between the artist Caroline Ross, who's going to be joining us on Tuesday morning, I think our session is, isn't it? Caroline's going to be joining us again on Tuesday. And Caroline was here with a poet who's local to this river valley that we're speaking from, on the Dart River, Dom Barry, who many of you know. And I know some of you, perhaps many of you here, will have encountered Dom's extraordinary first blood axe collection, Rite of Passage, sorry, Dom. And Dom has given his blessing on me opening our event with a poem from his collection. So I just want to bring this here. I'm not going to offer any commentary on it, and Dom, I just hope I do it justice. The body's new weather. In waves it came, but waves so small at first, nobody noticed the leaves dropping all summer, or the landscape's frayed yellow edges, or the days we went without wind. Then winter packed up and didn't come back. Then, again, the glaciers burnt dry, and the bears suddenly without their soft houses of snow. Then somebody shot them, and we thanked God for our climate's new harvest, and felt in our own bodies this new food rotting. Strange heat in the lungs, cancer ripening where the ripe meat should have been. And we named them our own illnesses, maladies of the body, not of the earth the body builds itself from. But then the earth turned on us, each new season collapsing until there was only high summer. And we felt then how the land must, aching and empty, and still we reached into ourselves, pulling up nothing. Or rather, not nothing, but another new desert, another woodland cut free of song. Only then did our bodies turn themselves on to protest like sirens in a city that has already been bombed.